prices and lack of grain, and Africa being one of the traditional importers of Russia's grain as well as fertilizers. I think Lavrov's mission is to find and secure a market for Russia's exports of grain, particularly in light of this recent agreement which Russia reached with Ukraine about the export of Ukrainian grain, but also in exchange for the release of for the lifting of some of the sanctions with respect to the agricultural and fertilizer exports from Russia to the outside world.
Then, given what has been said, through Lavrov's visit, how do you understand how African countries perceive Russia today, especially after the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
Look, I don't think there is a unified position. As I said before, the majority of African nations have taken a sort of a really cautious, balanced, kind of neutral approach. Some express quite sympathy to Russia, but we don't really see an outspoken condemnation of Russia's actions the way how it comes across, for example, in Western Europe or even in some Asian countries, like, for example, Japan or Republic of Korea, for that matter, etc. So it certainly, Africa represents an avenue for Russia to pursue a number of objectives, certainly including political objectives, which will allow Russia to effectively maintain this narrative that Russia hasn't been isolated and still has friends and partners across the globe.
Professor, but we've seen a lot of reports from the Western media outlets suggesting these African countries that are reluctant to join the Western camp in criticizing Russia are motivated by grain and energy concerns. What do you think of such analysis?
Look, obviously, African nations are interested in Russia's resources. They're interested in Russia's agricultural exports, but they're also interested in, for example, in education program that Russia is offering to the African nations. A lot of African nations continue to receive Russia's military technical support. In fact, Russia is world number one export of military technology to Africa. So there is also an element of security and military cooperation. We know that Russian private security companies are very active in a number of African nations. There have been agreements allowing Russian warships, Russian aircraft to use African ports or airports, even speculation that Russia may open up a naval installation in Sudan, for example, in the Red Sea. So it's a mix of economic considerations, soft power considerations, education, geopolitics, but also security and defense.
Professor, Africa is also being courted by the West recently with French President Emmanuel Macron's visit to Cameroon, Benin, and Guinea-Bissau, and the U.S. Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, Mike Hammer's visit to Egypt and Ethiopia. So how would you evaluate the frequent trips to Africa by the West?
Africa has become a renewed continent of interest of great powers. We've seen a gradual return of the United States into Africa. We've obviously seen China being very active across Africa, and that partially drove the United States' renewed interest in Africa. We see Russia returning into Africa as a power that has been traditionally involved in African affairs. We see Europeans retaining interest in Africa because of their historical involvement, predominantly because of colonial legacies, but also the geopolitical and economic interests. So,
but will the West, which is under immense economic pressure, come up with any concrete and realistic plans that benefit African countries this time?
Sorry, can you repeat it again?
Well, this time the West will provide some more concrete and realistic plans that which can benefit African countries this time, since they've been under immense economic pressure itself.
Well, obviously the West can come up with some propositions and solutions, but it's a matter whether that would be of interest to the majority of African nations. Obviously, the African governments want to benefit and achieve maximum benefits after in the current situation when many major European powers, other powers want to find friends, build up connections, partnerships, and alliances in Africa. But whether what Europe is offering would be able to counter offers coming from Beijing or Moscow, that's yet to be seen. And I think certainly a lot of African nations remember this colonial legacy.
Indeed, thank you very much, Alexei Muraviev. This is World Today. Stay with us.
Hello, this is Michael Zhang. Greetings from Los Angeles of the Golden State of California. Thank you today for making me part of your team. Truly enjoy the debates we had and look forward to many more in the years to come.
Secretary of the Embassy of Chile to China. It's been an honor taking part on your show and telling you about the relationship between Chile and China. Wishing you all the best.
In-depth analysis, valuable insights, expert views, presented by an award-winning team. Today, keeping you well-informed, up-to-date, ahead of the news.
You are listening to World Today with Mika Anna in Beijing. China has hosted Indonesian President Joko Widodo during the president's visit, which is seen as a major boost to the two countries' bilateral relations. During the visit, the two countries signed memorandums of understanding on the 21st Century Maritime Silk Road and the Global Maritime Fulcrum, as well as other documents on the cooperation in vaccines, green development, and cybersecurity. For this and more, my colleague Tian Wei explored the significance of the trip in an exclusive conversation with the Indonesian ambassador to China, Dr. Harry Ratmangom. The conversation started with the bike ride the ambassador took around Beijing. Let's have a listen.
Mr. Ambassador, I got to know you're a fan of biking in Beijing.
Oh, yes.
I saw your bicycle. It was fun. Tell me more about, what was it like to be now living in China, living in Beijing, for you as a diplomat and also as someone who is curious about cultures of other countries?
Beijing is rich in culture and historical sites, as well as culinary. So you can explore that during your presence here. And then to explore the cultural side and the culinary as well, one of the way to do that is through cycling.
As the ambassador to China, you have been over the past years working with your counterparts as well as those ambassadors from various countries to work on this very important occasion. Tell me more about your interactions with them and some crucial issues we're facing together.
In fact, we were able to establish a good relation, in fact, with my counterpart here, in particular with the Foreign Ministry here. Because when we received the information that Indonesia to become president of G20, so our presidency, starting from 2022, since then, we were able to communicate each other with the officials here, how to prepare better, and in particular, the visit of the Foreign Minister, State Councilor Wang Yi to Indonesia. So thank you very much for that support from your side, from your government, and open communications. And at the same time as well, I was able to establish a communication with the member of the G20, so ambassador of the member of the G20 here in Beijing, to exchange views on the current situations, how our presidency, in particular the theme of our presidency of the G20, recover together, recover stronger. So that's the theme of presidency of Indonesia. And then, of course, everybody at the time was looking forward as well to the meeting in Bali, because we were discussing whether 20 foreign ministers will be present in Bali, all of them, and then how Bali can create an ambience as well for them to meet each other. So before the meeting, a lot of discussions, a lot of preparations, and then Jakarta keep asking me as well on the not only on substantive discussions, substantive issues, but most important thing is the presence of the State Councilor Minister Wang Yi in Bali. So thanks that he's coming to Bali.
And thanks to the groundwork you and many others from these G20 countries have been doing, Mr. Ambassador, thinking about the broad topics that G20 has been focusing on with the ever-changing world, not only bilateral issues, but also crises like energy crisis, food crisis, as well as the pandemic and health, and also even some of the geopolitics and conflict. How do you see China and Indonesia will be able to cooperate as two of the largest emerging and developing countries on this platform?
Thank you very much for answering me, for asking me that question. In fact, before the situation in Ukraine happened, we already established 3 priorities for our G20 presidency. The first one is the global health infrastructures. This is the lesson learned from pandemic. The second one is the digital transformation. We are entering the new era now. We are not entering, but in fact the new era is already here. So, and then the third one is the new energy transition as well, renewable energy. So those are the 3 priorities. And then because of the situation in Ukraine, so here comes something else that we need to inject into the priority. So what was happening in Bali during the G20 foreign ministers meeting, 2 issues that were discussed. Number one is multilateralism, because we need to bring everybody to sit together in the multilateral set to resolve the issue. And number 2, due to the situation now, we are facing with the energy and food crisis, energy and food security. So those 2 topics were discussed at the foreign minister meeting G20 in Bali.
Talking about some of the key words you just mentioned, the security crisis, for example, food and energy. Indonesia is an important producer of energy resources for many countries in the region and beyond. The food as well. If you just think about the exports and imports that Indonesia has been doing with players in the region. So what is your thinking? What is the logic behind the suggestions Indonesia brought out?
Yes, because the severe impact of the war in Ukraine, it's already happened, and in particular, the victims is the developing countries. So this is the thing that we think that we should discuss seriously, try to find a sort of solution. For the very reason that my president, after attending the G7 meeting in Germany, he visited as well Kiev and Moscow to meet both presidents and to at least bridging the communication gap between 2. And then issues that he was brought up is the situation of energy and food crisis. So this is one of the issues. We pay a closer attention on that as a priority now. And then in small part, Indonesia could play that role as well. So through the G20 meeting and through the dialogue between my president with the leaders of the G20, because he's actively having a conversation with the leaders of the G20 as well, how to find a solution to this problem. And of course, he's been in conversation with the president of China, President Xi Jinping. Amazingly, that for the last 2 years, my president was able to establish a conversation for the last 2 years, trade and food security. So China will be substantive as well in trying to find a solution to this current crisis.
Mr. Ambassador, coming from Asia yourself, you know there is something about Asian culture that puts trust at the very top of priorities between person to person. So how do you see, our common understanding about trust and the importance of it play its role in making sure the success of G20 this time for ministers meeting, but also real interactions among, the diplomats in Asia?
I will take an example of ASEAN. Every year, leaders of ASEAN will meet each other at the formal setting, at the informal setting. This is the way in which communication among them was established on 8 August 1967. So that because of the communication and the trust, the habits of dialogue, we are able to establish the habit of dialogue among us.
Beautiful.
So if the habit of dialogue is there, then even though it doesn't mean that we don't have a problem. Yes, we have a problem among us. But through habits of dialogue, open communication, trust established, then we discuss how the leaders, not us, the leaders discuss how we can find a solution to our problem.
That's Indonesian Ambassador to China, Daw Heri Aram-Mangom. This is World Today. We'll be back.
With the great efforts made by the staff today, become one of the great platforms for policy debate and information dissemination. And I wish today have an even brighter and greater tomorrow.
Welcome back. You're listening to World Today. European Union member states have agreed to reduce their gas demand by 15% compared to their average consumption in the past 5 years. The move comes after increasing fear that Russian energy giant Gazprom could turn off the taps. Last year, Russia accounted for around 40% of U.S. gas imports. Since the Ukraine crisis, the bloc has been scrambling to seek out new suppliers. But amid drops in fuel deliveries, member states have entered emergency planning mode. So for more on this, we're joined by Professor Hans-Peter Berghoff from University of Hockenheim in Germany. Thanks for joining us, Professor.
Nice to be with you again.
Can we say this is a very difficult decision made by the EU with much opposition from member states like island countries, and member states have very different energy mixes. So first, how this bloc divided on this subject?
Well, to tell the truth, some observers were really surprised that we did come to such a conclusion because there are very different interests. I mean, we have the southern and western European states who are not dependent on gas from Russia at all. They get their energy from somewhere else, and they say, why should we pay, why should we take efforts for a crisis we're not responsible because we didn't make ourselves dependable on Russia. Well, they're dependable of other countries. And then we have a special case of Hungary, which is very dependent on Russian gas, and they try to play a special game by getting cheap gas from Russia now to have some profit from that. They're somehow in a problem because the Hungarian government gave a promise of cheap energy to its citizens as a part of a populistic policy, and now it gets more and more expensive to uphold this promise, and so they go their own way. By the way, the Hungarians were the only ones who were against the ruling we have now. So it is really a good sign of European coherence that we have an agreement at all, which to some degree might help us to cope with this crisis.
So are you saying the concerns of individual member states has been addressed in the final agreement? How will the plan work?
Well, the first is that everybody promised to reduce gas consumption by 15-16%, a little bit more complex than that. That's a first step without any emergency plan forced on the country by the European Union. if we get into deeper trouble, such a plan can be forced, but only with agreement of the states. So we need a qualified majority of the states. But this qualified majority can force some states to reduce their energy consumption, gas consumption. And the idea behind that is to get free resources of gas available that can be traded between the countries which have enough gas now and the others who don't have enough gas anymore. So it's nothing like a centralized allocation of resources, but we build on the market to get the gas where it's really needed.
We know 15% isn't a small ratio, so to what extent will the cut down affect the bloc? For example, which sector will feel the pinch first?
To tell the truth, if we be a bit more careful in our daily life, we can reduce energy consumption by a great degree. And the truth is, for Germany, we are already far below what we consumed of gas in the past. So every citizen thinks about what can we do to get out of this situation, what can we do to get out of this situation of pressure and blackmailing from Russia. So that's a general interest in Germany, and we are already something like 15% down just by voluntary activities. For sure, if Russia just cuts off gas, we might get some problems in industry. So there's absolute recession looming in front of us, where we might get into deep trouble. On the other hand, Russia wants to sell its gas and has to sell its gas as well, so they're gambling a special game as well.
But there are also some analyses say any cutoff of the energy supply will push countries like Germany, you just mentioned, the region's largest economy and the traditional growth driver of the region, to slide towards a recession, since it has a huge impact on the industries. What do you make of such concern?
I think that's what we expect. We expect if Russia just cuts off our gas resources, we get into a recession. But I mean, the recession is not the end of the world. It will lead to a restructuring of the trade ways. If we're still a part of an open world economy, we can get energy from somewhere else. We have to build the infrastructure to make this possible, but that's just a question of time. So Russia might have short-term advantage in its war against Ukraine, in its aggression against Ukraine, by cutting off gas here, but they won't, I should say, they push themselves out of an established trading relationship they have profited on for many years, and they won't change policy. That's something I think Russia does not really understand at the moment. They think the West is too weak. My experience from Germans, talking with Germans, there are many different views, but the majority of views as well, if it's a bit cold in winter, it's a bit cold in winter. They cannot change our policy in such a fundamental way.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of that, we know EU Energy Policy Chief K.J. Simpson said Gazprom's announcement was politically, the recent announcement saying that the company will cut flows through the Nord Stream 1 pipeline to Germany in half to just 20% of its capacity, and such a move is political motivated. But from the Russian perspective, Russian President Vladimir Putin said the company has always fulfilled and will fulfill all its obligations. So how do you look at the tangling of the two sides in the matter, and how will such game continue to...
there's a general saying that the first causality, the first damage done by war is that it kills truth. So it's very hard to believe what people say on both sides, for sure, because everybody has a political intention. Mm-hmm. But what we know is that Russia already started the war on gas even before the war, because companies under Russian control depleted our resources in Germany, so that Germany was not very well prepared. So it is a part of Russian warfare to lead this war this way, and however it's called, it doesn't make any sense. And it's right what you say, they just use 20% of the capacity, and they have 100% capacity, and the resources are not built up in Germany as a contract would order Gazprom to do. And obviously they don't fulfill the obligations. But well, it's a war situation. In a war situation, you sometimes don't fulfill your contractual obligations. That's quite normal thing in warfare.
We know the upcoming winter is expected to be difficult, especially since people are struggling with extreme weather in the region. According to The Guardian, EU gas shortage levels are at 66%. By the end of next spring, they could be seriously depleted with fewer options to replace stocks. So when faced with such an urgent situation, what are the ways out for the bloc at this point?
Well, the first is less consumption. That can be done very easily, especially in the private sector. If that is enough, I don't know, I have some doubts. There are alternatives, especially if we can look at other sources of energy. We have a big debate in Germany about nuclear power, which Germany didn't want to use from now on, but now we will come back to keep some of the nuclear power stations in action to get over the problems we have at the moment. And in the long run, it will be renewable energies as a solution. Some call it enthusiastically freedom energies. The truth is they make Germany much more independent, make Europe much more independent of Russian energy. And this will be very helpful. All this takes time. So we are aware that we'll have a very difficult winter in Germany and in the whole Europe. But we're willing to face that. And it's not like we just say, okay, please take Ukraine. You can do with Ukrainian what you want. We don't support them anymore because we want to have a warm winter. This will not happen, definitely, from all what I hear in Germany. I mean, but beware, there are hundreds of thousands of refugees from Ukraine in Germany, in Europe. They tell their stories. And these stories are really frightening and terrible. And so Europe cannot accept that. And so this kind of embargoes, this gas embargoes, this problem will not change European policy.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Berghoff. That's Professor Hans-Peter Berghoff from University of Hoffenheim in Germany. The International Monetary Fund has slashed the global growth forecast to 3.2% for this year, down by 0.04 percentage point from its projection in April. It said the global economy is facing an increasingly gloomy and uncertain outlook. Why did the IMF cut a world economic forecast again in just a few months? For more on this, Zhang Yang spoke with Dr. Qu Qiang, the Assistant Director of the International Monetary Institute at Renmin University.
So first, Dr. Chu, the IMF thinks the global economic growth forecast for this year will now be 3.2%. And in April, it was projecting 3.6%. So that's a downgrade of nearly 0.5% in just a few months. What's your reaction? And what are some of the main reasons behind it?
Well, I think IMF has made this prediction based on certain factors. For example, they predicted that the inflation can be temporary in America and in Europe and elsewhere. And secondly, they predicted that another main factor contributing to high price is the Ukraine and the Russian crisis. Conflicts, and this can be also temporary. They predict this whole situation probably is going to be lasting for 3 months or at most 6 months. And for some other things they've been looking at elsewhere of the world can be stable. But right now, if you look at the situation, they'll find that this inflation all over America and the West are very, very persistent. Just a few months ago, it'd be 9% in America. It's been the highest in decade. And also, in the recent months, this number still very similar. It's still in a very, very high level, not getting easier. And also, we've been seeing the conflicts in Ukraine still there. And both sides are very persistent in the situation. So, which means the whole supply chain globally and the whole geopolitical situation globally remain unstable. I think there are all reasons for IMF to downgrade the forecast.
Well, as the outlook for the global economy is darkened significantly since April, the IMF warns that the world may soon to be teetering on the edge of a global recession. And this year, we've seen the higher and higher food prices, energy prices, and the global supply chain disruption. So how have all this impacted the U.S. and Europe economy, the business, and individuals?
We have to understand the whole logic of the current world economy is that China and partially ASEAN countries and African or Latin American as producer, we provide productivities and And in America and the European Union, or generally the Western countries, they've been providing the financial resources and the demand side. So with this one supply side and the demand side, on the other hand, combined together in providing the drive for the whole world economy. But recently we're finding out the inflation just messed up with both sides. We've been seeing high rising prices just to make the order in a marketing system very, very different than before. And also the supply chain has been hugely jammed. And also been seeing the geopolitical conflicts everywhere has been making the whole globalization procession to be more and more slower. So this can be a global issue.
And the U.S. GDP outlook was lowered 1.4 percentage points to 2.3%. So what do you make of that? What do you expect for the Federal Reserve's move of interest rate hike later this week? And will the interest rate hike solve their inflation issues or broader economic issues?
Well, in America, I think the inflation is very, very persistent. Everybody thought it was just a temporary issue, probably because they've been issuing too much of the paper dollars into the market in the previous 1 or 2 years. But they've been partially right. It's a matter of printing money. But I think a deeper problem is they've been printing too much. 5 billion or even more than that. It's a phenomenon amount of the money poured into the market, but considering the productivity, the supply set cannot match up with such kind of supply of the currency. So too much of the money in the market. And also, you've been seeing the whole structure of the economy in the West has also been changed.
Mm-hmm. And on energy prices, I think one thing that we should all keep in mind is that the conversion from the fossil fuels to green energy is being emphasized over and over again by the IMF, but it's not that easy, right? So is the IMF underestimating the cost?
I don't think converting to the green energy can solve a problem, because right now the energy price is not is one of the very most important factor for sure, but not the root cause. Remember, in the year of 2006 to 2007, and the oil price is still higher than today. Is if I remember correctly, it's $148 per barrel. Is higher than today, considering the GDP is much lower 20 years ago. So today, if we're looking at $100 per barrel of the oil prices, actually it's not that expensive than before. But why today's economy looks more looming than before? It's because the whole economic structure is different. The whole globalization process is different, and geopolitical consensus are different. So, yes, converting to green energy can help a little bit, but not helping the whole picture.
And the global central banks like the U.S. Fed and the ECB, they are so desperate to get the inflation back to their target of 2%. And they are facing the risk of tipping the world into recession, right? So why is curbing the inflation so important?
If you do not control the inflation, one problem is that the whole price system, the signals of the market economy is going to be messed up. Because the whole market system is based on the signal system of the price. People based on the change of prices to decide the supply and demand. And if this signal light has been in a malfunction, and every decision you make will be wrong, we call it a phenomenon called the delusion of the money or delusion of the price. Sometimes you think you have earned a lot of money, but actually you just earned inflation in the price after the inflation. So indeed, you didn't earn that much. If you cannot bring down inflation to the normal level, and every decision you make will be wrong. So even if you're going to endanger a whole economy, but all in all, you still need to bring down the inflation. Or in our economists are saying, kill the dragon first. Otherwise, you wouldn't do anything.
And a lot of discussions on recession. Do you expect a recession for the global economy, or will it be a light or fairly shallow recession or a deep one?
Right now, I think we're just in a very early stage of a recession. But we're still in a recession. I think economists and entrepreneurs and decision makers all over the world can agree on that. But is it a shallow recession, or just recession still remain undecided? I think it will be decided by what people is going to do in the coming 3 months. Are we going to have a very delicate package of rescue? Are we going to have a very determined reform over the global economic system and trade system? Are we going to redo our financial system? I think the future decisions that people are going to make will decide where we're going to go. I think if we're going to make the decision right, it's probably going to end at the Q1 next year. So after 2023, the Q1, I think the whole thing is going to getting better and better. If not, I think the whole recession is going to be lasting till the 2025.
That's Dr. Chu Qiang, the Assistant Director of the International Monetary Institute at Renmin University. That's all the time for this edition of Word Today with Mika Anna. Thanks for staying with us. Bye for now.